Well, this evening we have a series of public hearings, amongst other things, related to some right-of-way vacation requests. And for those that are not that familiar with the process yet, I'll take a minute and just talk about it because they apply to all of them that we're doing this evening. When the city has right-of-way, it's either given to the city through a couple different means, typically through a subdivision plat. Right-of-way is dedicated to the public for use as thoroughfare, as roads, as streets, as pathways. Or sometimes it's done in a fashion where there's a deed of dedication, a separate document. But in either case, and there are others, that right-of-way then in essence is utilized by the city for public purposes and for public streets. And so when there's a desire to have the city release that public property and release it back to private ownership, we go through a public hearing process in front of the city council. So you're the board that makes that determination as to whether or not it is in the public benefit to release this publicly used ground back to private hands. Okay? So there's a process in terms that's laid out in the state statutes pertaining to public notice, advertising, sending out letters to folks within a certain distance of the area that's being considered, and then ultimately culminates in a public hearing, which will be what occurs this evening, wherein the council will take any testimony regarding the proposed vacation request and then make a decision as to whether or not they would like to grant that vacation request for the property specified. Within the packets, you'll see draft ordinances that address the conditions and the reasoning behind a vacation and where the property will go. Typically, it is split down the middle, but the state statutes allow us to dictate one side or the other in any form the council chooses to do so. Normally, we look back and try to find kind of what was the origin of the property. If it's in a subdivision and there's lots on both sides, pretty easy. You split it down the middle, it goes to both sides. Sometimes the right-of-way is on the edge of a subdivision or it was done through a deed of dedication, and it may not have come from property that's on one side but all from the other, and so then we put it to the other. So, I mean, just different techniques depending on the situations. The ones we've got tonight are all fairly straightforward, but we'll touch on those as we go through them. One other thing to talk about, I guess, is that in these processes, because it is a public hearing, providing any kind of input outside of the public hearing setting is typically frowned upon. That's why when we were at Public Works Finance Committee last time, even though it's a portion of the council, it was a very simple presentation of this is what's coming, we're scheduling a public hearing, so that we can provide all of the information to the council in its full form in the public hearing setting tonight. Okay. So to start with, we have the C Street Alley right-of-way vacation. This is a small request that's being granted by one property owner. And just to help orient you, this is C Street here, running east-west across the screen, Home Street and Circle Drive in this area. And we have platted right-of-way here for an alley, and there's also an alley here. And that right-of-way in this case is 16 feet wide. It is, as shown here on the aerial, kind of running between a couple of homes, and it's this 807 address on C Street that has made, the owner of this has made the request that we vacate 1.17 feet of the east side of this 16-foot alley right-of-way. It's not a very big piece, but it's just a sliver along the east side. And so the area of vacation is what is shown here in yellow, so it's very narrow, 1.17 feet along that easterly edge of the right-of-way, and only along their frontage, which runs from the C Street right-of-way here on the north side to this point here. They actually own portions of two lots here and here in the original plat. So it's 110 feet by 1.17 feet wide. A couple of shots of what it looks like. These are actually provided by the applicant in their application package, and their packet that they submitted to the city is in your council packet this evening. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. But this is a view from C Street looking to the south. So the right-of-way is this area right in here. It's again 16 feet wide. Between the buildings here, it's roughly 17 and a half, 18 feet. And so they're really looking for just a portion that would run, again, 1.17 feet on the easterly edge along that area. This, as you can tell, is undeveloped right-of-way. There's no road through here. There's no utilities that the city has. There are overhead power facilities. You can see a power pole right here. So there are power lines that run along C Street, but also run north-south in this area. The vacation request area does not lie underneath the utilities for the overhead, and so it should not affect those in any way. And again, we have no city utilities or any other underground utilities located within this right-of-way. One of the things we always look at, is there any need to preserve this right-of-way for future purposes if it's not currently being used for its original intended purpose, being some kind of a transportation corridor. In this case, it has not been developed, and part of the reason for that is once you get back about right here, then it drops off pretty sharply to the south down the hill and eventually ties into that east-west alley that I showed you on one of the earlier maps. So we're not anticipating that this, at least staff is not anticipating that this right-of-way would be used for any kind of road extension in the future. We do think there is some potential that it could be used for perhaps some underground utilities, whether it be a storm line or a sewer facility of some type. Possibly could be used for a pathway system, although I'm not sure the origin destination at this point. So it's something that we typically in Public Works do not really care to vacate city right-of-way because you don't know what the demand upon it's going to be in 15 or 20 years per se. We're here for the long haul, of course, but there are occasions where we do support right-of-way vacations. This is one of them. We don't feel that this would hinder the city's use of this area. The ordinance does preserve the right of use for utilities, both current and future, that would be within that 16-foot alley, in essence creating a 1.17-foot wide easement for utilities in what would be vacated alley area. So we'd still retain that ability to run utilities down through this corridor if there was a need to do so. And that's it. Fairly simple, and the applicant may be here, but I have not run. Yes, they are, and I'm sure they would love to come up and
Well, we're going to hang on just a second.
state their case when you
Les.
get to that point.
Yeah.
So.
Question for you on this alley. How many years has this alley been there? That looks like a house that's been around for about 80 or 90 years.
I believe the house has been there for probably since about the 1940s, somewhere in that
long
era,
time.
so quite a while. The plat itself goes back quite a bit further. I think it's in the early 1900s or late 1800s, that original plat in that area. So the alley itself has been platted a long time.
Council has questions for Les before I open the public hearing. Okay, thank you, Les. I will open the public hearing at 7:12, and I'd like to hear from Mr. Middlestead. And I hope I didn't butcher your name, sir. Please come up and tell us a little bit about yourself and what's on your mind here.
Thank you. So the origin of our request is related to this property, 807, I think it's West C. Okay. So this property was originally configured as a duplex property and has since, through several previous owners, been converted to a single-family home. But due to changes in city ordinances, the lot size is now smaller than that necessary for a duplex. And my wife and I would have purchased this property with the goal of returning it to its original configuration as a duplex property. But we would like to have this small sliver of vacation to bring us up to 7,000 square feet, which will bring us in compliance with the city ordinance for a duplex property. And with the goal of, like I said, returning the property to its original configuration and providing hopefully high-quality housing in a tight housing market that is not necessarily geared towards students, which is a rare situation in Moscow. And so that's the origin of the request. I'm happy to answer any questions if any members of the council have them.
Any questions for the applicant before we move on? I think you're in good shape. Well, if something comes up, we'll return you back to the podium, sir.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, I take testimony for anybody that is in favor of this application. Please come forward. Or anybody that would like to come up and tell us what's on their mind. General comments or opposed to this, please state your name and let us know what's on your mind. We'll give you 3 minutes, sir. And your address as well.